So patch 13.24b has been out for about like 3 weeks-ish now, and we're back with an analysis. But unlike previous meta-analyses that we've done before, this one's going to be a little different. First off, this is a one take, so no editing at all. I have tried my best to automate everything, so let me know how that goes. Let me know if you can tell. But second, and the big thing why, is because since we're so late, a lot of compositions have already been out. I don't really want to echo box the same things that people have already talked about, especially when there's videos out there that are basically what I would have done, but they just beat me to it. And the big one is actually Goobums. Goobums, who, compared to anybody else, by the way, I've watched a bunch of compositional and tier lists. I think Goobums did the best job talking about the different compositions that you should lean and whatever, because in this video, I climbed 1000 LP playing only these 6 comps. He goes over basically every comp I would have ran over in my video. So like, why the fuck would I echo box it? I'm just gonna link his video below in the description. I have better things to talk about. I have better things to share with you that are gonna help you, and it's not gonna feel like you're watching the same video twice. Just to give you the rundown, by the way, Goobums, if you don't know, top 10, top 15 challenger player, always up there in the ladder. He's hit rank 1 multiple times. Very strong player, and he's also recently just started content creating, so I highly recommend checking out his channel. But in this video, he also goes over 6 Sentinel Ari, Twin Terror Twitch Vex reroll, which is a comp that has sort of popped up within the past like 4 to 5, maybe 6 days at this point. I think it's been about a week since I last heard about it, or first heard about it. Yone reroll, Riven reroll as well, EDM Jax, and he goes over AD Flex. Now, he makes a lot of very good points in AD Flex, by the way. If you're like struggling with Ezreal and Caitlyn and you're like wondering why you're not succeeding with it, I really recommend checking his like coverage on it. He makes a lot of really good points about the rejuice during stage 3, TD spat, and like why he thinks this is like the hardest line to play. So again, I'm not gonna repeat anything that he says. Go check his video out. He like show him some love, you know. It's great. It's a very good video. One last thing, he does mention stuff here called ideal augment cadence. This is something that I think you should take it with a grain of salt. It's not that anything he's saying is wrong, by the way, and I actually 100% agree with this. The only difference, though, is that if you are like somebody who's like Heartstuck GM, Heartstuck Masters, Heartstuck Diamond, Emerald, Plat, or maybe you're just climbing the ranks or you're relatively new to TFT, things like augment cadence is something that it's not going to be why you are losing your games. It's not like, for example, right? Let's say it's 4-2 and you're offered binary airdrop and you're offered hedge fund, right? 9 times out of 10, you're going to take binary. But there are going to be situations where taking binary is the incorrect choice and you should actually take hedge fund instead. There are going to be those games. So being able to critically assess your position and then determining what augments best fill the void that your comp needs is way more important than listening to some top level player talk about augment cadence and then thinking I have to do what he says. Again, I'm not flaming Goobums in any way. I don't know if it comes off that way. But what I'm saying is that you need to be able to assess your position critically, because that is way more important. I hope that makes sense. But again, this is something that you might be thinking to yourself, oh, I know how to critically assess my position. You probably fucking don't. People struggle with this shit. Like, I struggled with this for like 2 whole sets. It wasn't until like, I think I hit like 400 LP, 500 LP was when I was like, okay, now I'm starting to get the whole like critical thinking thing. So like, it's hard. You can climb very high without having to really think too heavily about it. But like, once you have to actually start thinking about it, you want to start hitting those like higher and higher tiers, that's when you have to really, that's when it really comes into play. But enough about that. There is one composition though we do need to cover real quick though. I did say I wasn't going to cover any, but there is one we need to cover because Goobums, one, he didn't cover it, so it's time for your boy to shine. But also because I think there are some things about this composition that I think people are not doing correctly, / they are not considering enough, and that's becoming a bit of a problem. First off, it's country reroll, woo, woo, whoop-de-doo, like, wow, what a revolution. But this comp is actually really strong, in my opinion. I think it's just strong under the right circumstances. So those circumstances are Collector, because if you get a Collector at 2-1 because you're in that Ornn Anvil portal, it's fucking good. It's fucking great because you should be immediately thinking, hey, it's a Samira game. IE Collector, BIS Samira, Last Whisper is amazing. She utilizes all that crit. You are farming infinite gold because in case you can't see that number down here at the bottom left, it's 150 gold to get all this shit online. A Moonwoo 3, Set 3, Urgot 3, Vex 3, Samira 3. Really strong comp and especially a low elo killer. So if you want to climb like heavily in like plat or whatever, this is like a very easy line to lean into. I will say this though, people over prioritize Urgot in this composition. This is another big mistake I've seen a lot of people do. And stop. It's like what I'm trying to say. Urgot 3, it's like not it's a unit, it's just not that great of a unit in my opinion. You also are never really able to really fully itemize Samira, Urgot, and Set unless you're in like that like portal that gives you like all like double components, right? But even then, it's like Urgot 3 is so lackluster. He just doesn't feel that great. And I think people are prioritizing him over something like Set 3, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Set 3 is such a strong tank. It is incredibly strong, and he lasts forever when itemized. So making sure you have basically the Great Wall of China and you have a fucking nuke in the backline, like, you are very set to go. You have a fundamentally very sound board. Obviously, a Mumu 3, Urgot 3, Vex 3, you find these, you pick them up on the way while you're re-rolling, but nonetheless, still a very, very, very strong line, and I think it's underappreciated for how strong it is, just because I think people are over-prioritizing the crab, not enough on Samira and on Set. But that's basically it. Vex 3 is also great as well, but now that Twin Terror is sort of in the meta, if you have a Twin Terror player in your lobby, this might be a little hard to find. A Mumu 3 is great. It's just a bonus. Nothing much else needs to be said. Oh, and one last thing. This video by Layduck. Secret headliner rules Riot doesn't want you to know about. This video in particular is crucial for you to understand if you want to play something like Country Samira. Country Samira, in case you haven't already realized, requires Country Samira, the headliner specifically. You cannot settle for Urgot headliner. You cannot settle for Set headliner. It has to be specifically Country Samira. That is what's really important about this composition. And here's the thing. You need to be able to hit the Country Samira, meaning if you want to increase your chances of hitting it, you need to know how to manipulate your headliner. So in this example, right, if you watch this video and you're like, I still don't understand it, I'll give you the very, very, like, TLDR. Let's say you are rolling for Samira Country. You see a Katarina chosen in your shop and it's +2 Country. You should buy it and sell it to reset the headliner rules. This way, you don't have to go through another 4 shops minimum until you see another Country unit again. You're basically saving yourself a lot of gold. Same with Country Urgot. You see Country Urgot headliner, you should buy it, and then you should sell it. That is like the very, very simple TLDR. It goes for any unit, specifically like, let's say for like EDM Jax. You don't want the Macho one, you want the EDM one. You see EDM Lux in your shop, you should buy it, and you should sell it. That is how you should manipulate. And that is very important to know for this patch. Specifically because people are starting to now understand how to be efficient with their headliners. So you should know how to do it too. It's a very stupid thing that exists, but it's an optimization that you should know. I think, you know, everyone should know what it is. I don't think it's not written anywhere. You have to watch a Layduck video who's unassociated with Riot and then more confirmed it. And now you're like, well, shit. Well, I don't want to be at a disadvantage, right? So it's something you should know. TFT is a quite the information game. But anyways, moving on, stage 2. Open forting. Now, I felt like it was important to mention this because open forting, and if you don't know what open forting is, open forting, very simply put, is when you just clear out your board, you don't buy any units, you don't buy anything on your board, on your bench, and you just fucking lose every round, ensuring a 5 loss, so then that way, you are able to generate a bunch of economy, spike your board on 3-2, 4-2, whatever, and you are able to just have so much money that you can beat everybody else when it comes to finding your headliners, when it comes to finding your units. Did you see that B-roll transition, by the way? Oh, that's one take, baby, one take. But anyways, it's great. It's great. It's very strong, but it carries some risk. And the biggest risk is if you miss on 4-2, let's say you're playing around a 4 cost, you're fucked. The game's over. If you open fort into a 4-2 roll down and you miss your 4 cost headliner, you're out. You will lose. You don't have the HP to spare to try to find a plan B. It's fucked. Your plan A is your only plan A. There's no such thing as a plan B or plan C in this kind of type of playstyle. So you're committing pretty quickly into a comp, and it's very high risk but very high reward. Second, TD spat. As you can see, the dummy with a little true damage spat on it. True damage spat is absolutely fucking busted. And I think, actually, funny enough, I think pentakill spat is starting to be on the rise again because of a little bit of hype with pentakill. Specifically with Mordekaiser 3, you play 7 pentakill with Mordekaiser 3 and a Kali pentakill. And it's actually incredibly strong. But regardless, basically you're saying, hey, because I lost the first 3 rounds with maximum damage, I should be able to get on the carousel first pick. And as long as that spat is running towards me, I should be able to grab it. So keep that in mind. If you're open forting, you're almost always looking for that spat on that first carousel. And if you find it, grab it, nab it, and you are basically chilling. True damage spat, there's a saying in high elo where true damage spat is a free top 2. Keep that in mind. Second thing I want to mention during stage 2, if you decide not to open for it, I want to talk a little bit about the headliners, because I think some of the headliners right now are so much stronger than others. And stage 2 specifically, there are some that we really got to talk about. First off is Corki and Yasuo. I would say out of all of the headliners right now, Corki, Yasuo are like some of the best ones that you can find. The reason being is that Corki, no matter what the headliner is, Big Shot or 8-bit, very easy unit to play, super flexible with any items you throw onto him, and it's just so strong that you just get a streak throughout stage 2 without much issue. Another thing is Yasuo. Yasuo is great if you have 3 Edgelord already. So whether that is you get true damage headliner and you get like Riven and Kale somewhere, totally fine. But you get the Edgelord +2, which in my preference is actually better, because I think that this just means you need to have a Kale and suddenly you have 3 Edgelord. Kennen's very easy to find, and you have 2 true damage. Once you have these 2 activated, one of the strongest stage 2 headliners, you get to play Hodge, i.e. lean into Yone, one of the strongest meta lines at the current moment, and it's a GG. Very, very nice to play around. Annie and Jinx are also very strong damage dealers, specifically Emo Annie. This is something that has been spoken about numerous times in the past, but Annie is great if you are like, you have a really strong line for something like Sentinel Aries. Then she can just hold things like Blue Buff, hold things like the Gunblade and the Nashers. These are not items that I would really want to slam early on, though. We'll talk about that later in the video, but that's something to keep in mind. Usually Annie is either Annie reroll or you're playing into Sentinel Ari. Jinx is also great at holding a lot of 80 flex items. Somebody's very pissed off in the background. Jinx is great. I don't know if you can hear it. Some guy's like blaring the horn for like 10 seconds straight. It's like, welcome to Boston, man. But before I got rudely interrupted, Jinx is also great at holding a lot of 80 items, but you are sort of forced to play into 80 flex, and that can be a little difficult. So even though Corki is better, Yasuo is better in my opinion, I think Jinx is a little below both of them. Finally, for tanks, Cassante is easily the best. It's not even close. I've seen a lot of people buying things like Lilia Headliner or like Taric Headliner. I don't know why you ever would. Taric Headliner only makes sense if it's +2 disco and you have a Gragas and then you have the Nami and then you have 4 disco, and that's actually kind of strong. That's like the only exception. Cassante is easily the best tank. Kennen is like acceptable, but this is like if it's like 1-4 and you're like shit, like I might as well. So there you go. It's not the best, but I thought it was worth mentioning. Moving on, Ornn items. There are some Ornn items that like heavily, and I mean heavily, enable comps. For example, like we talked about earlier, Gold Collector. You see Gold Collector 2-1, you should be thinking Samira. So you should immediately be slamming and thinking about country reroll from like the get-go. Zhonya's is basically a free Jax game. Zhonya's on Jax is so unbelievably strong. I don't know why it's allowed, but it's so fucking strong. It's just not okay. Sniper's Focus is almost always an Ezreal game. You could take Sniper's Focus for Karthus, but Karthus right now is just so off meta, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. There is some, and I say this with a grain of salt, some speculation that with Pentakill Spat, you can Sniper's Focus is back with Karthus. I've heard it, I've never seen it, I have yet to play it, but it's possibly back. But I don't know, so just keep that in mind. But Sniper's Focus is almost always Ezreal. It's so strong, it's very reliable. Way more reliable than like some experimental line. I'm just putting it out there. Manazane is almost always Annie, and it's almost always Ahri. And it can sometimes even be Ezreal. But if you get to the late game, you're fast 9. If you know you're going to fast 9 at 2-1, which makes no fucking sense. I've seen it before, though. I saw somebody have Goldmancer, Manazane, JG, Annie 2 at 2-1 because they had Superfan in. And like, that was stupid. They went level 9 at like 4-5. It was ridiculous. They had like 80 gold left over. Then you can think about throwing it on Jhin, but that's just something to keep in mind. But again, a lot of these Ornn items, you should know like what units use them really well. Death's Defiance is really great on Riven and it's great on Yone. Infinity Force is really great on like AD Flex and also great on Yone, also great on Riven. So, you know, keep those in mind. Those are the main ones. There are some other ones as well, but there's nothing that really stands out besides those 4 to 5 that I had mentioned earlier. Next thing I want to talk about, by the way, this is really important. Missing the headliner. This is the big thing that I haven't seen people talk about it, because like when it comes to talking about tier lists and comp lists and like the meta, people talk about what is meta, what you should lean, what happens when, you know, you find these components that you want to play this unit, right? But people don't talk about what the fuck happens when you miss your headliner. And I think it's so important. You need to understand that, like, missing the headliner is 90% you planned incorrectly, 10% you genuinely missed your fucking headliner. So what do I mean by this? There are, for example, some compositions where if you miss your headliner, you have backup plans. Ezreal is the big one. AD Flex is the big one. Where AD Flex, if you miss on the Ezreal, we find a Caitlyn, you have a backup plan. You hit the TD Akali, that is a backup plan. This is obvious. I think everybody and their mother, or anybody who is at least like maybe plat, knows that you have backup plans available. Like, you're not tunnel visioning on one unit. I would hope. Maybe Emerald, I don't know. But there are some compositions where if you don't hit the headliner, you are fucked. RE Sentinels is a very, very clear big one. If you are playing RE with 6 Sentinel, you know the board is 6 Sentinels, RE, Seraphine. The only quote-unquote acceptable headliners are RE and Sentinel Blitz. If you miss, you're fucked. So here's the thing. When you miss your headliner, how contested were you for your line? Because there are so many people who complain that they missed their headliner. But if you are uncontested with like 30, 40, 50 gold to roll on your line, you will most likely find your headliner. More often than not, you will find it. So when you miss on the headliner, it's either low roll during those times, but you also need to really take into consideration how contested you were. Because if you're trying to play RE Sentinels, you slam like that Gunblade that Nashes at 2-1. I was talking about earlier how I don't like that, right? If you plan to just commit to RE at 2-1, and you didn't scout the lobby, you didn't see that somebody else slammed blue buff and they have like a bow open, or you didn't see that somebody else had like a Gunblade slammed already, right? If you didn't do your due diligence in scouting and making sure that you're actually at least not that contested, or if contested at all, you're gonna miss. And if you miss on these lines that there's no room for error, then it's just a GG, go next. I'm sorry, that's just the cold hard truth. It's the same with a lot of reroll lines. For example, did you do your due diligence? Sorry, English. I feel, okay, here's the thing. English is like not even a hard... English is a hard language, but it's harder to talk. Like, there's... Like, the alliteration is hard. Anyway, sorry. Jax, for example. Let's say you're trying to play Jax, right? Before I got terribly sidetracked. Jax, if you didn't scout the lobby, and you didn't see that some fucker took, like, submit to the pit at 2-1, and you're like, I'm playing Jax this game, I don't give a fuck, I hit the headliner, or I don't give a fuck, I have 6 Jaxes, good fucking luck, buddy. Alright? Just keep that in mind. Not hitting the headliner is 90% you didn't do your due diligence in scouting. So keep that in mind. Or you're me, and you miss all the time. But that's not entirely true. But just keep that in mind, okay? You should either have a backup plan, or you need to understand that you didn't do the right decisions in the early to mid game, and that's what caused you to enter this failure of stage 4. But that was basically it. Finally, we need to talk about... Well, actually, there's 2 things to talk about. The first one, it's item economy. This is a video that Froden released yesterday. Who has the better item tier list, rank 1 versus rank 1 Korea? Very good video. Very, very good video. This is basically teaches you like what are strong items and what are weak items, right? And your item economy. Because your item economy is incredibly important in this patch. And I mean TFT in general. But if you don't know how to balance your item economy, you can't lean strong items because you are incorrectly utilizing your items. Does that make sense? For example, let's go back to this. Let's go back to this chart here. Everybody has their items, right? Strong item economy comes from knowing what items are strong. And then what makes an item strong, right? So, you know what? Hold on. I'm pulling out the notepad. But, item economy 101. TLDR. And this is important, by the way. If you really want to climb in TFT, this is important. You have to understand this. TLDR, item economy is basically you kill low value components. And then that allows you to slam strong items. And then these strong items allow you to lean strong lines. Strong lines. But there are some questions that pop up with this, right? For example, what makes a component low value? Right? How do you kill low value components? And what makes an item strong, right? So let's talk about it. This is important. You need to understand why this is a thing in TFT and like why it affects the way that you play the game and why it might seem like maybe you have some bias towards slamming some specific items, and that's why you're like, why am I playing Ari every single game, right? There are some players who are like that. I definitely felt that while I was like learning the game. So I'm sure somebody out there is gonna benefit from this conversation. But anyways, what makes a component low value? A low value component exists when there are few or no options to make that lean, strong meta comps. I should phrase this better. Few/no options to make items that are strong on meta comps. So for example, right, in the current patch, in this current set, Rabadons is a useless item. Giga useless. The reason why is because the only strong holder that can utilize Rabadons is Karthus, who is very off meta and very, very weak compared to other lines that you can play. So Rod just doesn't let you make a lot of great things, right? Other Rod items, you have Spark, we have Crown Guard, we have Archangels, we have Gunblade, we have Ginsu, we have JG, we have Morello, right? These are like all, I think these are all of them. Spark, Morello, yeah, I think these are all of them. Out of all these items, like Spark is great in AP comps, but it's never going to be like your first slam. I don't know why my phone is going off. I'm going to check that in a little bit. Spark is one of those items that like, it's great if you know you're playing Ari, but if you're not, it's kind of fucked. Crown Guard, it's flexibly, it's okay in a lot of comps, but it's not amazing. It's never a tank's bis. Archangels is only great on Karthus. Gunblade is great on Ari, but you're committing to Ari. Or TF. Ginsu is only great on Sona. JG kind of sucks in general. It's just very lackluster compared to any other AP damage item, so like, why would you ever take it? And then Morello, it's just the worst red buff. So, it's just a low value component. Rod is just easily the worst component in the game. So now, how do we kill these low value components so that we can actually still garner the maximized amount of value without destroying our item economy? Well, it's very simple. All you do is you create acceptable items by combining low value components with low/medium value components. So a great example of this is Crown Guard. Because this is a decent frontline item. You're never sad to have it, right? But it kills Rod and it kills Chain. Now you might notice I wrote /medium value components, and I guess we can make a very quick tier list, right? But in the current patch, low value components are easily Rod and Cloak. Medium, this would be Chain, this would be Belt. And then high value, I believe this is right, high value components would be things like Tier, Sword, Bow, Glove, right? These are the big ones. So you're killing a belt, you're killing a Chain, you're killing a Rod here. So that is great. Terrific way so that you aren't getting in the way of building strong items, things like IE, things like red buff or whatever, because you used like a sword when you're trying to kill your Cloak and you made a BT. Like, why would you do that? What the fuck? So this brings us to this last question though, like what makes an item strong, right? Well, an item is strong if it lets you lean strong lines or it keeps multiple strong lines open. So for example, Infinity Edge is a terrific example. Infinity Edge basically lets you play Yone, lets you play Riven, lets you play Ezreal, lets you play Caitlyn, lets you play Akali. A lot of top tier meta lines are available to you. I wrote Infinite Edge instead of Infinity. I think this is like a TFT brain, but these are all very strong units that you can play around. Infinity Edge is a very, very strong slam. Another example is something like Blue Buff, Ari, Ezreal, right? A lot of strong lines that lets you lean into. Very, very good. And it lets you kill the tiers. Very, very good. Keep that in mind. So the way you're slamming your items will affect the lines that you're able to lean. And once you are able to efficiently lean into strong lines specifically almost all the time, you will have a very good time. Now, what people value as low, medium, and high in terms of the component value, this never changes and deviates too often. In terms of people agreeing, obviously, like there are some metas where Rod is the best, and there's some where like Sword can be the worst because maybe AD is terrible for whatever reason. I mean, I can never see that really happening, but you get the idea. Most people will agree that this is almost always correct for what is low, what is medium, what is high. But what items are strong or what are weak, that is very subjective. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, again, I will link this video as well in the description below if you want to go check it out. But Rank 1 Korea and Rank 1 NA, Dish Soap versus Bobe, they disagree pretty heavily on a lot of things. So just keep that in mind. But anyways, that's basically going to do it for me for this meta-analysis. I hope this was helpful. I hope this was interesting. It's very different compared to what we normally do for a meta-analysis. It might seem a bit all over the place. A lot of things to talk about, a lot of things to take note. But again, very, very interesting stuff to be said. Oh, I'll leave you with this little juicy one, by the way. Clement posted this the other day on Twitter, and he talked about how he was surprised by 7 pentakill being widely played in a Vietnam tournament, but the comp is the classic Akali Karthus with penta headliner spat on level 8, strong stage 4, but not ranked highly in meta, and he has a whole thread talking about it. A lot of people talking about other stuff, but I thought it was pretty interesting to keep in mind. Mordekaiser 3 is a very strong unit as well. I think that's something that like really like makes this composition like A1. But anyways, enough about that. You heard me yap about it before. But anyways, this was a one take, so let me know how you guys think about this shit. I'm not gonna put an outro at the end because I forgot to make a scene for that. But anyways, that's gonna be it for this video. Let me know what you think, and I will see you guys all later in the next video. And until then, oh, by the way, I am streaming later today, so come check it out. Probably gonna be doing a co-stream with like Sub-Zero and like talking about KDA Cup because we're gonna be probably watching it together. I might go grab some beers and then it might just be a chill stream. So if you wanna go hang out, talk about VOD reviews and whatever, and life in general, come hang out. I'll see you guys there. But until then, take care, guys, and happy clubbing.